Why do the religious have so many questions for atheists, especially questions that are so absurdly simple to answer? And the answer to that is because these are not deep thinkers on the religious front. They barely make it into the shallows when it comes to their religious beliefs. It's why all of this is such a ludicrous laughingstock. And as should be no surprise, here we go again. Today, we take a look at an article from a website called crosswalk.com, and they have 3 supposedly great questions for Christians to ask their non-religious friends. Except, as should be no surprise, these are really terrible questions, born of emotion, not intelligence, and therefore they go absolutely nowhere except against the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. But we don't roll that way around here, so let's go take a look at these questions and see why nobody with half a brain would ever fall for any of them. Buckle up! It's gonna be a bumpy ride from here. Now, before we get going, I wanted to say something briefly about why I wanted to take a look at this. And that is that the expectations of the religious, especially on sites like this, which are aimed at very casual Christians with pop culture sensibilities, is that no one really bothers to think much about what they believe or why. And that, I think, is a real problem for the religious because, as we all know, this is all about feelings, not facts. It's about holding an emotionally comforting belief system, not a factually defensible one. So, when your audience holds hippy-dippy beliefs, it doesn't matter if you make much sense or not, because these people never make any sense. So let's go into this understanding that because it becomes important later on. As Christians, we know that God has called us to spread the gospel to all peoples on earth, Matthew 28:16-20. But this can often be quite a daunting task when you're trying to figure out the best way to share the gospel with someone who doesn't have a faith or religion, or even harder, doesn't believe in God. Of course, they don't even want to consider active skeptics like me, who not only don't believe in their imaginary friend, we have done our research and understand why the idea of a God is actually pretty darn silly when you think about it. But they have to keep coming at us, at least pretend that they do, so that they can fulfill their biblical mandate. Except that Matthew 28:19, which says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations," and 1 Peter 3:15, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope that you have. Those passages don't actually expect anyone to have any actual responses to the Christian claim. It's why they fail so often, and why they really don't want to talk to us. We also know that our atheist friends can range on a spectrum. They may veer more towards open agnosticism, where they may not believe in God, but are open to hearing evidence about the possibility of a creator, or they may plant themselves on the complete opposite side of the scale, where they do not believe in God and do not want to hear anything that remotely sounds like Christianese. And the ones that they skipped, of course, are the people who know all about Christianity, and we know what's wrong with it. They can't quite get that one through their heads, and they don't even want to go up against us regardless. Because for us, blind faith and emotional comfort doesn't equate to rationality, and they have nothing more to offer. So they cast us as the enemy and then refuse to have any intelligent discussions with us at all, because they have nothing intelligent to say in the first place. No matter what the case, we do believe that God can open up the eyes, ears, and hearts of anyone, Acts 9, 1 through 19, and we cannot fail in our calling to spread the good news about Christ, even if the prospects of convincing our friend of the gospel message don't appear to be bright. And this is very common if you notice. Now, a while back, I was making the same points for STR videos. They were preparing their students for failure because the chances of success were very, very low. Because they have nothing intelligent to say, and increasingly in the modern world, that's what's expected from all but the most low-hanging fruit. You have to do better than that, and the fact that they can't, that ought to be disturbing to the street apologist who wants to convert their more intelligent friends. So let's go on to see what they think engaging an atheist isn't. I know many Christians, sometimes myself included, who love the philosophical, apologetic, and debate side of the Christian faith. Some forerunners of these include Augustine, C.S. Lewis, Alvin Plantinga, William Lane Craig, Anselm, among others who have lived throughout the 2 millennia of church history, and none of whom are particularly valuable when addressing actual skeptics, which is why none of them actually do or did successfully. All of them fail because they have nothing of value to say. They just repeat oft-debunked claims and appeal to emotion because that's all Christianity is. But it has to be more than that if it wants to convince anyone rational, and it simply isn't, which is why apologists routinely fail to convince anyone who isn't the lowest of low-hanging fruit. And that's a problem. However, when we approach our atheist friends, we do not want to put on our best Augustinian face, so to speak. In other words, we don't want to "God's not dead" our debates with our friends, and we should dearly hope that it doesn't take a fatal car accident to convince our friends to convert to the Christian faith. No, you actually have to have rational arguments, and religion simply doesn't. That's why all of them simply appeal to silliness and poorly constructed philosophical syllogisms that they don't even understand because they aren't going to go up against anyone who could shred them before their eyes. They only care about people that they can fast talk and love bomb. And that says something very derogatory about their intellectual skills. Because if you actually have a belief system worth holding, you actually need evidence that stands up to critical scrutiny. And unfortunately, the religious have absolutely none of that. This means we don't start quizzing them on their thoughts on the cosmological argument or drill them through the liar, lunatic, Lord conundrum C.S. Lewis presented in regards to Jesus claiming divinity. We want this to be a conversation, a seed planting. With these questions, we can open their minds to the possibility of Christ and the gospel, but we cannot get to point Z without starting at point A. And we need to make sure to respect them by listening to them. And that's something that comes up a lot if you notice, that they want to listen. They don't want to explain. They don't want to tell you how they know what they know. They want to tailor their approach to appeal to their subject. They have nothing intelligent to say to someone who isn't looking for the swill that they're pushing. They want people they can con, not people they have to convince. And there's a difference. But let's go see what their 3 questions are and why they don't actually get you anywhere. Question 1. Where do you believe the universe came from? Most likely, you'll get an answer about how the universe exploded into existence out of nothing. And honestly, your friend would be correct. But from this answer, you could converse, okay, I agree with you. The universe came ex nihilo, out of nothing. But what do you think causes something to come out of nothing? Except nobody says that but the religious. This is a point that I've made before, that the only people who believe in creation ex nihilo are the religious, and the second you point that out, they tend to shut the hell up. Now, I did a video not too long ago where William Lane Craig tried to define his theology into existence by saying that he was only talking about things that worked the way that he wanted them to work, whether they actually worked that way or not. And this is blatantly dishonest. Things are the way that they are, and you have to deal with them as they are, not as you want them to be. But that's not how the religious tend to work, is it? But if they actually had to face the reality, their theology would go right out the window. So they're really good at making claims that don't stand up to any scrutiny and pretend that they are right when in fact they are not. No matter what the case, from here, you could talk about the fine-tuning of the universe, how everything appears to have been created with a distinct purpose. After all, if the Earth shifted slightly towards or away from the Sun, all life would cease to exist on the planet. Now you notice how they phrase this, how everything appears to have been created with a purpose. Well, appears according to who? Because it sure doesn't look that way to me. But then again, I'm not pretending that mankind is magically special because it makes me happy to think so. And that's really what the religious are doing. The simple fact is, the only reason we're here is because the conditions were right for us to be here. If the conditions had been different, no one would have been around to debate the fact. That's really not an impressive argument when you think about it. This question can remind your friend that something, whether personal or impersonal, had to form the universe. And given the amount of power that would take, and the fact they would have to create time as well, this could cause someone to conclude that an omnipotent and omnipresent being exists. And what if your friend just calls you on your emotional bullshit and refuses to acknowledge what you need them to acknowledge? Because that's more likely to happen going forward, where most people have a decent education and a healthy dose of skepticism. These are people who desperately don't want to have a discussion with their intellectual betters. And you notice that a lot online, where a theist will jump on a comment that you make only to run away screaming when you can back up everything that you've said and you aren't willing to acquiesce to their claims of faith. Because I don't do that. The second someone says, I have faith, they've lost. They really have. It just means their position is so poorly supported that they have to resort to wishful thinking to accept that it's true. And that is just stupid. So, one question down. Let's see where they go from here. Question 2. Why are there some instances of objective morality in humans? You will not find a single culture on Earth in the history of mankind who says, yes, be a coward, that is good. No culture hails cowardice. Yet, in fact, lots of them do. Conscientious objectors are a thing. I don't want to fight because I don't believe in violence. It's everywhere. So that's just completely wrong and the product of a mind that hasn't stopped to look around and see reality. No matter if we argue that morality has a sliding scale depending on one's culture, certain objective moral issues appear to permeate every culture. If someone claims that we have developed morality as an evolutionary mechanism to survive, that doesn't seem to hold up either. Except, as I already showed, it doesn't. There is no such thing as objective morality. The definition of objective is not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. Yet that's all morality is, no matter where it's purported to come from. We made it up, and because we humans are, in general, pretty darn similar, our ideas about morality tend to be pretty similar as well. And so the whole idea of objective morality is absurd to begin with. There is no such thing, and that bothers a lot of people. But your feelings don't really mean a damn thing when it comes to reality, so you gotta get over that. We made it up because for our purposes, it works. Morality gets us where we want to be. And that hurts the feelings of a lot of people who really aren't deep thinkers. They want morality to mean something. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. It's just us as a social species trying to make sense of our interaction with reality and with each other. Accept that as it is. Deal with it. It's really not that hard. After all, what about people who risk their lives to save someone in danger? They know it's morally right to do so, but it will not increase their survival rate. Everyone has issues that makes their blood boil. But do we know why it incenses us? From this discussion, your friend may come to realize that an objective moral standard exists outside of ourselves, and therefore someone had to put it in place. And that's wrong because there's no evidence for any of it. Once again, their phrasing gives it all away. Your friend may come to realize, not will, may. Because this is all the fallacy of low expectations. Expect to fail miserably so that you can be surprised if you actually succeed. It's actually called the Gollum effect. When you don't expect to win, you don't tend to win. And that's why the religious lose so often. Question 3. What are some of your objections to the gospel and to Christianity? It may be helpful to start with this question before the rest, because every agnostic or atheist likely has different reasons for why they don't believe in Christianity. They may have started in the faith and drifted away. They may have a cognitive dissonance between scientific evidence and what the Bible appears to say. And this is another common tactic. Don't try to inform the other side of the truth of your claims. Make them do all the work on their own. Healer, heal thyself. And this goes back to the common belief that everyone is just like they are. We all believe, we all want to believe in something greater than ourselves. Well, what happens when we don't? The religious can't handle that. The second that I suggest that I don't need any of the things that they think they need, they run away. Why? Because they just can't deal with someone like me. What is my objection to Christianity? The fact that it isn't defensibly true with objectively demonstrable evidence. And what can they say to that? It isn't like they can present any evidence, because they have none. If they did, that's what they ought to be leading with instead of all of these silly questions. But they can't because it doesn't exist, so they just run away and they try to go after easier targets. And that doesn't say anything good about them, does it? And you notice at the beginning that I stressed the Bible appears to say certain things, right? Because the religious can't just read the Bible as written, because the Bible as written makes no sense whatsoever. They have to interpret the Bible. They have to run the Bible through their own personal religious filter so that they can discover what it means, not what it says. Because what it says is stupid. And, they can't have that, can they? But it can help us to realize their starting position and what points we have in common. And what if you have none? What if you have absolutely nothing in common? What do you do then? What if the only path to get someone where you are is through things you simply cannot provide? And the answer to that is... And by asking this question, we show that we want to listen as much as discuss. We open the floor and acknowledge that we don't have the answers to all the questions, and that we value their viewpoint. Except you don't. You just don't. The religious don't value any viewpoint besides theirs, because if they valued your viewpoint, they wouldn't be there trying to change it. The reality is they don't value your viewpoint because they have nothing they can say in response. They have a little bag of tricks and tools, but what I require, that isn't in their bag. They have nothing they can say except make excuses and run away screaming. The second you disallow blind faith and irrationality, what do they have left? Absolutely nothing. Atheists may have questions for you, depending on your friend's hostility toward Christianity or how much they'd like to engage in debate. They may have some difficult questions prepared for you as well. Except you won't have any answers, will you? And that's the problem. Sure, if they throw you some softballs like the ones they list, you might be able to give them some bald rationalizations. But you can't actually answer anything complex or requiring objective evidence because there's none of that for Christianity, which again results in It really is sad when you think about it. I have not had a single apologist or theist stick around when the going got hot on their side. Why? Because they've got no time to fight a losing battle. They're after the low-hanging fruit, and as everyone here knows, I'm looking for something a lot better than that. And unfortunately, there simply isn't any. Again, I'm not going to allow faith or emotion or irrationality to be the basis for an argument. If you throw any of that stuff at me, I'm going to rip it apart. I will tear it to shreds, and no theist can stand up to that without looking like an idiot. Mostly because that's what they are. I'm not interested in your feelings. I'm interested in your facts. I don't care what you want to be true. I care what you can demonstrate is actually true with objective evidence. And it's why every single religious friend I've ever had who has tried to convert me to their religion, they've either run away screaming or they've become an atheist. Mostly the latter, which I think is pretty cool. I've got no time for irrationality. If that's what you're going to do, if that's what you're committed to, then find other freeways to play on. You aren't going to get anywhere with me, and that's not because I'm stubborn. It's because you're dumb. We've got way too many dumb people in the world already. It's time we all did our part to eliminate it. Which theist wants to see if they can challenge me intellectually? Make an orderly line. I'm more than happy to knock you all down.